The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting groups. If you'd like to produce a show, call us at 260-421-1250.
Place where people didn't let things happen so drastically because everybody gathered together and the most humble could give his opinion and it was heard and acted upon. And people seem to have a great deal of moral fiber in the workings of a town.
Hello, Bill and Denise, all the way
Hi,
from
Terry.
Australia. You lucky people, you escaped.
Yeah.
You hear me?
Yes, I'm having trouble hearing you, but I can barely.
Well, I just wanted to say that from 1975 to 1978, you were in the control room trying to make me look good for about 82 shows. And now here we are on Zoom. And you've got to talk.
Oh, dear.
Anyway, it's great to see you. And those shows, the reason we're doing this is, 40 years. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's longer with us, but on public access in Fort Wayne, which you helped to start, it started in January 1981 with my show, Theater for Ideas, Rock and Roll, Friends or Foe, Friends or Foe. Gotta be rock and roll music if you want to dance with me. And my first words on public access ever uttered in Fort Wayne, this was Friday night, 8 o'clock live. We did 50 straight live shows and it about did me in. That's why I have this balance problem now, I'm convinced. But anyway, on NBC television at that time, there was a very popular show called The Incredible Hulk. So the first words were, "This is not The Incredible Hulk. You're watching Theater for Ideas on public access television." Because, viewers would confuse me with The Incredible Hulk. You know that. So anyway, hey, it's great to see you guys. And, those shows, well, let's just talk a little bit. First of all, the odds that we're all here. Denise, you grew up in Perth, Australia, where you are now. I think you came to America and went to college in New Orleans. If I'm wrong, just correct me. Bill's from Lima, Ohio.
In Fort Wayne, I went to uni.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Bill, you grew up in Lima, Ohio, and moved to New York. And here we are all in Fort Wayne. How'd that happen? Let's start with you, Bill. How'd you get to Fort Wayne from New York? And then we'll talk about those.
When I was in New York, the Citizens Cable, I believe it was that in Fort Wayne? in New Haven.
Yeah,
Uh,
New Haven, very important.
They were just beginning, and they sent Bill Turnley to New York to meet with people at Open Channel, which was one of the big public access groups in New York. I was volunteering with them, and they wanted to get someone from Open Channel to Fort Wayne to help them with public access, setting it up. And since I was from Lima, only 65 miles away from Fort Wayne, I was the obvious one to send, along with, Mahoney, I forgot his first name.
Tom?
But we went to Fort Wayne and covered the Three Rivers
Yeah.
Festival with 2 Magnavox cameras, which sometimes were the right color, but mostly not. But we did it. We covered all of the parades. We had a one of those, what are they called, cherry pickers. Somebody loaned us a cherry picker so we could actually be over the parade on the street. So we got shots down in the parade. We went to all of the boat races, and we just had a great time. And I went back to New York, and then they decided that they needed someone to help out. So I decided to move back from New York, and I did. And I started working at Citizens Cable, doing a lot of background work. And Bill Turnley had done a great deal of it to begin with. And together we kind of set up what was going to happen with public access. And that's when the idea of taking the Theater for Ideas programs and running them on the New Haven cable system.
Yeah, it was New Citizens Cable, John Bonzub in New Haven.
That's right, yes. And so we did that, and things just grew from there. And I got somebody knocking on my front door.
Yeah.
Come in, Colin.
Whoever it is can join us if they want. So you worked
Yeah.
I didn't realize you worked for Citizens Cable for a while, and then you got hooked up with Theater for Ideas with me.
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. John Bonzub, I guess, fired me or laid me off on Christmas Eve. And that's when you came to my rescue with doing this Theater for Ideas recording. So we set up
Go ahead.
We set up a whole system of video production system with cameras, tripods, lights, and Rick DeBolt and I built the set for Theater for Ideas, which was one that we could break down and transport in the back of Rick's pickup truck. Henry was the name of the truck.
Right, yeah, and Henry.
An old Chevy truck and a pickup, and we would transport the set in that and all of the video equipment in the back of my Vega. And then we would go to different locations.
I remember you piled that set on top of that Vega, and the top literally caved in. I mean, it was caved. And we used to say, if you want to work for Theater for Ideas, don't worry about having talent. Just be strong. we need somebody strong to carry the stuff. And I think that was before Denise came on the scene.
Yeah.
And so how did you get to Fort Wayne from Perth, Denise? And then how did you meet Bill?
Well, I was I wasn't sure what I was going to do, so I was thinking of getting. I think I wanted a degree, so wanted to follow up with my studies in media. I thought of England, and then I thought of the US, and I did a trip out to the US to find out what sort of university offerings there were, and I ended up, for a variety of reasons, settling at Purdue University in Fort Wayne. And in that capacity, I met Terry, and then in that capacity also I met Bill. So when the two combined and there was an opportunity to work at Theatre for Ideas and Sundown Video, I snapped it up.
Well, I'm sure glad you did. You also snapped up Bill, right? You guys got married.
My goodness.
So yeah, I mean, going back to Citizens Cable, those were the shows Bonza made a big deal out of in the franchise application, which led to 1981 public access in Fort Wayne, and that was I think it was January 9th, 1981 was the very first show. But again, we did all those shows in the 70s, and then you guys moved to Albuquerque and started your own station. Tell us a little bit about that.
Do you want to start, Bill?
Yeah, we did a little bit of research to find out where it was most likely that we could set up public access in New Mexico or Arizona. We found out that Tucson did not have a cable system, and so that was sort of out of the question. New Mexico, Albuquerque was had a system, but they didn't have public access. They had tried it briefly and then dropped it. And we called the cable system in Santa Fe and Taos to see if there was any chance there. The guy in Santa Fe, when I said public access, said, "I tried public access. I don't want to hear about public access," and he hung up the phone. So that decided that was not going to be Santa Fe. But anyway, we hooked up with the people in Albuquerque, and they didn't want to do access themselves, so they allowed us to operate the channel. So we set up our studios and our workshop area, and found out that the cable was not going to go to that area at all.
Oh, no.
So we had to move. So we moved the whole operation up to an area closer to where they could tie us into the cable. And so, yeah, then we started in October 31st of 1981 with our first cable cast, and it was going great when we left.
Great. Well, you guys put a lot of work. I want to introduce Patty Hunter, our host, and Patty helps me a lot, and she also has her own show on public access for over 10 years called Patty's Page. So welcome, Patty, and thank you. And this might be a good point just to talk about why public access matters. I mean, you guys, I remember when you went out there and the name of your company is quote unquote, you had a building that was just a mess, frankly. And you had to, I mean, you really started from scratch. You had to clean that building out and you know, work for funding, get equipment, all that. So what motivated you? I mean, what about public access? I mean, that guy you called said, "I don't want to hear anything about public access." You have obviously, and I do too, and Patty, the exact opposite view. What's important about public access to you, any one of you?
Well, we were committed to the whole idea of public access because it really gave the individual an opportunity to get access, the disenfranchised, and to a medium that was really important in those days. And with cable coming through, it gave that opportunity, and so we were wanting to take advantage of it, and we were hoping when we arrived there to get the opportunity to run the channel. We started off by teaching people around and the community about using video equipment, and got a group together who were interested in doing programming. And then when the opportunity came to operate the channel, we again snapped that up. It's really, we really found that there were a whole lot of community groups that valued having public access. And when we went back years later, we met a woman who said, "You're Denise and Bill Makley. You, the organisation that you set up, saved my life." And I was a little askance at that. And she said, "Look, I really was depressed, and the opportunity to have a say and produce my own show empowered me." So there were a lot of people who had who felt a great degree of empowerment, both for themselves personally and also to contribute to the community. And that's what public access means to me.
Well, with me, Bob Erie was the one who was my mentor to be a producer. I started out as a camera person. Then he got me interested in being a producer and host of my own show, Patty's Page. Original, isn't it? Anyway, it was a pretty good show. It still is. It's going on my 11th year now. We are reaching out to people who think the same way I do. And it doesn't have to be commercial, because the commercial people will not put whatever I put on my show. It's a family-orientated show. But people come up to me to say, "I am glad that you are on TV and that people can listen to you as you speak." Because I have very interesting guests and singers and all that. I also had Dr. Rita King, Father Frank Pavone, Patty Duke and all that. So it was good. It still is. So far, we haven't been censored yet.
Thank you, Patty. That's a great story, Denise. The lady told you you saved her life. I mean, I think a key word is empowerment, that people get to do, express their ideas, their views. That's empowerment, where you can't do it on a commercial TV. I mean, you can't just go say, "I got an idea and I want to express it." But on public access, you can, and you made that opportunity possible for that woman. And
I think by now you should be getting the idea that Celebration wasn't the usual kind of conference. In fact, it wasn't a conference at all, in the sense we were not trying to solve anything. Rather, we were just trying to do what we've been trying to do all along in the folk school's 4-year history: make people feel good about themselves. Or to put it another way, we're trying to narrow the space between people by establishing a network of concerned individuals who have come to realize there's no one way, no one answer, no system, no institution that's going to solve our problems for us. All answers, indeed all questions, must come from within, first in the solitude that breeds thinking and learning, and then in concert and comradeship with others. We are, most of us, only too willing to turn over the responsibility of our lives to institutions, to the experts who come to define our lives without explaining them, to control them without enriching them.
I want to say some of the great times from my visits to Denise and Bill in Albuquerque, and I got to see their hard work up front. And they also took me all around New Mexico, one trip to Mexico. And I got to tell this story because it's one of my favorite one-liners from Bill. They moved to Perth. I think they thought, hey, he won't find his way out here in Perth. And I told him I made a visit. My brother Chris lived in Sydney, so I was going to visit him. And I talked to Bill and I said, "Bill, I just realized that Perth is the furthest distance from Fort Wayne, Indiana on the planet. And I'm going to come to visit you. And he says, well, not far enough, I guess.
Oh,
I got to check out, but I visited anyway. So anyway, you guys have been great to me. Thank you. And any other stories of either when you were in Fort Wayne? Tell any story in Fort Wayne about a show that you did that worked on that was either funny or sad or
I
frustrating
have a
or
question.
all the above.
If I'm
Pardon?
going to ask a question first,
Yeah, sure.
there's no censoring, but it's up to a certain point. You can't show hate or whatever, or nudity, whatever is. Am I right?
Well, there's a little bit of a story about that after we left, quote unquote. There was a bit of a kerfuffle because someone, the rules about what you could do and what you can't do were very poorly defined. And someone decided that they would test it out after we left, and they had someone come on nude and do a talk show. I think at that point there was some discussion about whether the city should continue funding them, but I think they got through that issue. There weren't that many controversial things to my knowledge that went on, but that's sort of an issue now. I don't know. We haven't been acquainted with public access for such a long time. I don't know whether they brought in new rules or regulations.
Have they, Terry? What are new regulations? Do you know?
I haven't really been too involved in public access.
Oh, you have been my.
Turn in shows every now and then, but I'm not up with what their new rules and regulations are.
Neither am I. I haven't been there for a dog.
I did a show today with my brother, and he said a couple cuss words, and the host, a friend named Paul, said, "Oh, I don't think they'll play that," or something to that effect. So I'm not sure.
In those days,
what the rules are.
In those days, it was whether it would be meet the standards of community decency. Well,
oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
deal with
community decency. There's a lot of that in America. All right.
Yeah.
Riots, wars, community decency. Yeah. Do they meet the standards? Endless wars. I don't think so. But anyway, this is why public access matters because. I suppose there's a limit somewhere, but like the lady who spoke so eloquently about how public access benefited her, she wasn't worried about those kind of restrictions. I mean, you can apply common sense, and to a lot of people, you just get to express your ideas. I'm one of them. I mean, for all this time, I have pretty much been on public access television doing documentaries, shows like this, discussions, the shows we did in the 70s.
My show.
Still some of my best. And Bill had a good point. We had a government program then called CETA, and we all got a salary. We were actually paid. And so we had a studio office over on Wallace Street. We called it the Mansion. We had equipment. We had Bill and Denise lived there, and tapes and some income. And so we had the equipment and the things. We didn't have to scramble all the time to find them. And of course, the government cut that program at some point.
I don't get paid for the last
Really
11
good.
years.
Pardon?
For the last 11 years, I never got paid once.
No, it's hard to get fun. That's a big problem is like Patty or when I was doing Theater for Ideas regularly, it's very difficult unless you have a government program like CETA to get funding. I mean, regular, consistent funding. We do a program now called River Drums, and we put it on public access. It's a cultural celebration. and we get funded by the city for one show a year. But I mean, as far as doing it for a living, that we can't. Like Patty said, 11 years, and she's never gotten paid, except I pay her for helping at River Drums out of that grant. But it's not perfect. Nothing is, but you expressed really why it matters very, very well. And so you guys don't do any public access now? Do you do any television out in Perth?
Well, Denise was teaching media for the past 20 years or so. And I worked on a casual basis. Whenever she did a studio production, I would operate as the director. She would be the producer, and then the students would be running all the cameras. But we don't have public access in Australia. There was a public access broadcast station here, but they lost their license. They weren't doing very well. And there are still, I believe, one or two around the country, maybe Sydney, Melbourne, I don't know where else, but there's not much. The people don't have cable very much here. So
The future is the internet.
What?
The future is probably the internet.
Right.
And satellite TV. So there's not a great opportunity for us here. But if you don't mind, I'd like to go back to
Running out of time.
what sort of stimulated me.
It'll end in 10 minutes. 10 more
All
minutes.
right, very briefly then. When I was in New York with Open Channel, volunteering with them, they got a government grant. Sorry, it was probably Ford Foundation, one of the foundations, a grant to do a series of 6 programs in the various prisons in New York State. And it was, one of them was, one of the prisons, the inmates had formed a swing band. And so we recorded the band. Another one, they had a drama group. Another one, they just had a discussion program about life in prison. So there were these 6 programs, which I thought it was amazing. That was my first introduction to public access. And that's what stimulated me to see what it did for these inmates, when it gave them an outlet and a way to voice what was going on within their life. So that got me started. Anyway, then it led on to
New York, right?
Sorry?
That was in New York.
Yes, I was in New York before I went back to the Midwest.
Okay.
We're going to have to start.
Yeah, we're getting a sign that says 8 minutes left. But anyway, what was one of it? If we showed a clip of one show from the 70s that you guys worked on, or a couple, what would you pick?
Oh, I found the one on UFOs pretty fascinating, especially since some of our sound equipment went out in the middle of the show.
Oh, I like to hear that.
Yeah, we had, I remember a big show we did on UFOs at St. Francis, and nothing worked. And it was like, what? There's some power here in this control room.
Spooky.
Wow.
I remember we did that show. We went to somebody's house that had seen UFOs. All these shows, by the way, are on archive.org, every one of them. I got a grant from the city to convert. We shot all those on those. We'll put a picture of it when we edit stuff in. But those reel-to-reel videotapes that nobody's ever heard of. And when I called around, I got the grant, and I'd call places, New York, San Francisco. Do you convert reel-to-reel tapes to digital? Oh, yeah. And it was clear they were talking about audio, like albums and stuff. I said, no, video. Oh, no, you mean audio. I said, I'm telling you, video. Yes, it's got audio on it, but also pictures.
Oh,
So
I
finally,
see
a
digital.
place called George Blood in Philadelphia
Yeah.
did it, $150 per tape. And you know, the amazing thing is, all those tapes were stored in the basement of the library downtown, which I didn't even know they were there. I thought they'd all been discarded. And what a thrill. I walked in there and I looked on the wall, and it was all those black box theater
Yeah.
Fridays. And I thought I'd walked into Fort Knox, you know. I said, oh my gosh. So anyway, they're all converted, and the city, I'm really thankful because they said those are historical programs. They help create public access. I would say they created public access. I
Yeah.
mean, other shows, I'm sure, but none that were that consistent. And as we said, John Bonza made, to his credit, made a big deal out of community,
Yes.
the way cable could benefit the community, not just have cable shows from around the country. So it was very
And
important, and all those shows, the city then put them on archive.org. So you can just go to archive.org, type in Theater for Ideas, type in UFOs, and that show will come up. Denise, do you have a favorite?
oh, I was just thinking that that's a community that's really important. And in the local community, the advantage of cable is that you can narrowcast, you can connect people in the community rather than divide them.
Oh,
Right.
very good point. Yeah. What was the show where didn't you meet Bill when you walked back into the control room or something? We did a show at the university.
Yeah.
I got that
Yeah.
right.
It was
That's
a normal, yeah,
normal.
Pardon?
Normal.
What's
Nor-
normal?
that for the reform of marijuana laws.
Oh, that one. Oh, that
Yes.
figures. All right.
I'm
All
sure.
right.
That
We
one.
get a clip out of those shows. I think I was going to say out of all those shows, only maybe one didn't transfer, and maybe five others had bad video, but the audio was good. So it's amazing because you know they sat there for 40
Yeah.
years or so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, anyway, we're telling us now we got 3 minutes. So what would you like to say in the last 3 minutes?
Who's first?
Well, I was been concerned lately with what's happening with tweet.
With what?
It's whether
Twitter?
tweet, Twitter,
Yeah.
whether
Oh,
tweets
Twitter.
are replacing, trying to replace public access. And you just can't say in 280 characters, uh, uh, solve a problem or talk about the issues. And I just worry that people are going to um, try to rely on the internet rather than public access. So I think access has a bit of a job ahead of it, trying to make sure that they don't try to replace public access with Twitter.
Well, that's a very good point. I mean, back in the 70s, who would have ever dreamed there'd even be a thing called internet, Facebook, Twitter, all these different things, cell phones, and we didn't have any of that. We still did some great shows ranging from the Holocaust to dance to well, marijuana usage,
I know you
victimless
say that.
crimes. Did a whole series. Fort Wayne had a giant blizzard in 1978. We did a 4-part series on that. Uh, so that's really involving the community in a way that Twitter, Instagram, Facebook never can come close
That's
to
right.
doing.
That's
Because
right.
people could share their stories and uh, well, it's been really great. Patty, you want to say anything?
I want Denise. What's your name again?
Bill and Denise.
Denise. I said it right. I said, what do you have to say, dear? You got one more.
We were discussing the future as well. And I just think that the potential for communities to work together is really important, and empowerment for individuals. Those are the things that I see as the future for public access.
Yeah, I love that word empowerment.
Harry, almost
Used in a
over.
positive way.
As only thing I have to do with my shows is aired and it's streamed online at the same time nowadays.
Oh,
And also, we put our own shows on YouTube.
Well,
oh,
I'm going
that's
to
pretty
wrap
good.
up here and
Okay.
say something brilliant, or at least say something in 15 seconds. Bill and Denise Makley, you're pioneers. You helped create public access in Fort Wayne, Indiana. You created public access and helped occur.
A local clergyman adds, as a citizen of Fort Wayne, I have struggled for years to encourage the development of some kind of recurring intellectual stimulation program. And Theater for Ideas is currently the only serious, regular gathering of a sizable number of people that I know of in this entire community. It seems to be flourishing. A community organizer comments that for those of us who work in the community in a variety of areas of social and cultural change, our common problem has always been finding a forum where different ideas and attitudes can be expressed in a context that does not reflect that of the status quo. As a participant and as an observer, I cannot think of any other format or medium of exchange as powerful and relevant as Theater for Ideas. It is truly a grassroots effort done with very minimal financial assistance, and if allowed to grow, will certainly have a favorable influence upon our decaying public institutions. It is no longer an experiment in education. It is a reality and one that deserves the support of us all. A parent writes, each Friday is a very stimulating experience. Theater for Ideas is an excellent program. Another college student adds, I can't think of any series or college class in which I have learned so much. I hope that in the future a way will be found to spread these discussions further, such as radio or video. A professor at Purdue writes, for years, Fort Wayne has been without a way to create a climate of communication for diverse peoples. Theater for Ideas provides such a way, and I can think of no service so valuable to our community. Professor of Education at Purdue writes, finally, a format has been set up that recognizes that learning is an outgrowth of experiences and not just a product of a degree or fancy titles. And a professor of sociology at Indiana Tech says, I think that the folk school is the most important thing in our community, and Theater for Ideas is the most important thing the folk school has ever done. A businessman adds, it is indeed encouraging and refreshing to see such an enlightened program in Fort Wayne. I only hope it continues.